My wife and son died in a plane crash. I suffered for 3 years. During a business trip to Canada, I saw a woman walking with a little boy who looked exactly like my son. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. Every instinct told me to run toward them, but I stayed frozen. Then I started moving slowly, keeping distance, following their steps through unfamiliar streets. They stopped outside a store, laughing, holding hands, looking so alive. And then someone else joined them, someone I never expected to see there. That's when everything inside me shattered. Leave a comment. Where are you watching this story from? Because what I saw through that boutique window was just the beginning, and someone out there might need to hear what happened next. The cold wind from the Pacific pierced my coat as I walked down Oak Bay Avenue. Victoria, British Columbia had always been beautiful. In winter, Victorian architecture, quiet elegance, but today, the beauty felt hollow. I just left a 3-hour meeting with a tech billionaire who wanted a custom waterfront estate. The project would have been a career highlight. Instead, I could barely remember the details. 3 years since the plane crash. 3 years since I'd lost everything. I stopped in front of an upscale children's boutique, intending to buy something for my colleague's daughter back in Connecticut. Through the large glass window, soft golden light spilled onto the sidewalk. Inside, a woman with auburn hair held an expensive Hermes bag, laughing. Beside her, a man knelt on the polished floor, carefully lacing tiny leather shoes on a boy who couldn't have been more than 8. My hand froze on the door handle. The man's profile, the way he tilted his head, the gesture of brushing the boy's hair back. I knew those movements. I'd seen them 1,000 times. My heart stopped. He turned slightly, reaching for the boy's jacket, and I saw his face clearly. The face I'd mourned, the face from the photo that still sat on my desk, surrounded by candles I lit every week. My wife, my son, alive. Deanna's hair was longer now, styled in loose waves instead of the sleek bob. But it was her, the delicate mole behind her left ear, the way she touched her collarbone when she smiled, the graceful movements that had made me fall in love 12 years ago. And the boy, Jasper, older, wearing an expensive wool coat I'd never bought. His face had lost its baby softness, but his eyes, those hazel eyes, were unmistakable. The man stood and my world collapsed. Garrett Sullivan, my best friend since college, the man who'd held me up at the funeral when my knees gave out, the man who'd helped me sort through financial paperwork. When I couldn't see through my tears, he was holding my son's hand, laughing with my wife, looking at them with an expression I recognized because I'd worn it myself for 5 years. Love, pride, possession. They were a family, a complete, perfect, happy family without me. My vision blurred. The boutique window became watercolor, all soft edges and bleeding colors. My breath came in short gasps. People brushed past me, annoyed by the man frozen in front of a children's store. But I couldn't move. 3 years. 3 years of hell. 3 years of debt collectors, of selling everything my parents left me, of working 18-hour days to pay off debts I didn't understand. 3 years of waking at 3 a.m. with my chest tight, wondering if the pain would ever stop. And they'd been here together living. My phone was in my hand before I realized it. I stepped behind a pillar, fingers trembling, and took photos, then video, and repoing at the counter. Garrett, lifting Brian his shoulders, all three walking out, Jasper's laughter, echoing on the quiet street. They climbed into a silver Tesla parked 2 blocks down. I memorized the license plate. When the car disappeared, I stood in the gathering dusk. The cold wind bit through my coat, but I didn't feel it. The pain in my chest was gone, replaced by something sharper, colder. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I didn't know how or why, but I would find out. I needed a plan. Something perfect, something ruthless. The plane tore through the night sky, leaving Victoria's glittering lights behind. I sat in business class, staring at the darkened window. The flight attendant offered wine. I declined. Just ice water. I needed clarity, not comfort. My phone sat face down on the tray table. The video was still there. Deanna, Garrett, Jasper, alive, laughing, a family without me. I closed my eyes and the memories came flooding back. 3 years ago, I'd been at my office in Greenwich reviewing blueprints for a museum renovation when Edmund, my father's old lawyer, called. His voice was shaking. "Colin, there's been an accident. An international flight. The passenger list, Amra and Jasper's names are on it." The blueprints slipped from my hands. The room tilted. I remember my assistant's scream as I collapsed. I woke up in Greenwich Hospital 6 hours later. Edmund standing by my bed, his face grey. They haven't recovered any. They're still searching. But I already knew. My wife and son were gone. The funeral was held 2 weeks later. There were no bodies to bury, just photos, flowers, a church filled with people I barely recognized. I stood at the front, staring at Deanna's portrait, her bright smile, the way her hair caught the light, and felt nothing. My body was there, but I was somewhere else, somewhere cold and empty. Garrett had held me up when my knees gave out. His hand gripped my shoulder, steady and warm. "I'm here, brother," he'd said. "Whatever you need, I'm here." I'd believed him. 2 weeks after the funeral, the debt collectors came. 3 men in dark suits appeared at my door on Roundhill Road. They had documents, loan agreements, wire transfers, signatures, all with Deanna's name. $5.5 million borrowed from private lenders in the Cayman Islands. For what they wouldn't say, your wife guaranteed these loans with your joint assets. "Mr. Dawson, the debt transfers to you." I'd stared at the papers, uncomprehending. Amiad never mentioned loans. We'd been comfortable, not wealthy, but stable. Why would she borrow millions? My father Bernard had tried to help. He'd spent hours on the phone with lawyers disputing the documents. The stress sent him to the hospital a week later. He survived, but something in him broke. He aged a decade in days. My mother, Judith, stopped sleeping, stopped eating. She sat in Jasper's room for hours, clutching his stuffed bear, whispering his name. I sold everything. The townhouse in Manhattan went first, then my Porsche, then my shares in the architecture firm I'd helped build. I worked 18-hour days, taking every commission I could find, bleeding myself dry to pay off debt I didn't understand. Garrett had appeared during those months, offering to help with the finances. "Let me look at the books, buddy," he'd said. "I know people. I can restructure this." I'd been grateful, desperate. I'd given him access to everything. God, I'd been so blind. For 3 years, I lived like a ghost. I kept Jasper's room exactly as he'd left it. His race car bed, his toy trains lined up on the shelf, the photo album on his nightstand, pictures of him learning to ride his bike, his face bright with joy. Every night I sat on the floor of that room and cried, silent, wrenching sobs that left me hollow. I opened my eyes. The plane hummed around me. The ice in my glass had melted. I pulled out my phone and watched the video again. Garrett's hand on Jasper's shoulder. Deanna's laugh. For 3 years they'd lived in paradise, built on my pain, on my parents' suffering, on lies so deep I'd almost drowned in them. But that was ending. The man returning to Greenwich wasn't broken anymore. I was someone else now, someone cold, someone dangerous, and I was coming for them. 3 days later, Edmund called. His voice was heavy. "Colin, you need to sit down." I was at my architecture office reviewing floor plans for a client renovation. I stepped outside into the hallway, closing the door behind me. What did Quincy find? Something big. I heard papers rustling on his end. For things, all of them point to the same conclusion. They planned this for months, maybe longer. My grip tightened on the phone. "Tell me, first, the dental records, the ones used to identify Deanna's body at the crash site. They were fabricated, created at a private clinic, 6 months before the accident. Quincy found digital timestamps on the files. They'd been backdated, and the dentist..." Edmund paused. "He's a college friend of someone we'll discuss later." My stomach turned. What else? Second, the DNA sample. The tissue recovered from the crash scene was suspiciously small, degraded. The lab report shows signs of being rushed, corners cut, procedures skipped. The DNA matched your parents, Bernard and Judith, at 99%, enough to confirm familial relation. But here's the thing, they never did a direct comparison with Deanna's DNA from medical records. The sample was allegedly too contaminated. I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. "They faked the body or used someone else's," Edmund said quietly. "We don't know yet." Jesus Christ. Third, the life insurance. Great Northern Life Insurance. The $10 million policy. They haven't paid out, not a cent. They've been investigating on their own since day one. Too many red flags. Insufficient evidence of actual death. They're holding the money. Pending resolution. $10 million. The policy Amara had taken out 2 years before her death. The one I'd forgotten about in my grief. Why didn't they tell me? Because of the fourth thing. Edmund's voice turned grim. 2 years ago, Garrett helped you sign a waiver. Do you remember? I closed my eyes, searching my memory. Vaguely, He said it was just paperwork, something to expedite the process. That waiver surrendered your right to contest him if the insurance company denied the claim. It removed you from the equation entirely. No lawsuit, no pressure on Great Northern to pay. Garrett told you it was routine. It wasn't. My hands started shaking. The phone trembled against my ear. He set me up. He set everything up. The waiver meant that even if you'd survived the grief, even if you'd pushed for answers, you had no legal standing to challenge the insurance company. They could investigate for years, and you couldn't do a damn thing about it. I couldn't breathe. The hallway walls seemed to close in. Colin, they planned every detail, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The dental records, the DNA, the insurance, the waiver, all of it for months, possibly longer. This wasn't impulsive. This was calculated, methodical. And Garrett, Edmund, trailed off. Garrett was there every step I'd finished. My best friend, the man I trusted with everything. He helped her do this to me. We're still just scratching the surface. Quincy needs more time to trace the money, identify accomplices, figure out how they got bodies or body parts onto that plane. I stared at nothing, my mind racing. Dental records created 6 months in advance. DNA samples too degraded to verify. An insurance policy held hostage by a waiver I'd signed without understanding. Edmund, I said slowly, if they faked the DNA, whose body was it? Or was there no body at all? That, Edmund said, is exactly what we need to find out. 2 days later, Edmund called me to his office. His face was grim. Quincy found something, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. I opened it. Dental records. Deanna's dental records, supposedly used to identify her body. Look at the date, Edmund said. The records were dated 6 months before the accident. Digitally created, backdated, fake. Quincy traced them to a dentist in Delaware. Edmund said, a college friend of someone involved. The records are fake. I flipped to the next page. DNA analysis reports. The samples were degraded, contaminated, Edmund explained. They showed a 99% match to your parents' blood relation, but there was never a direct comparison to Deanna's actual DNA. My chest tightened. Someone submitted biological material related to my family, but not Deanna's. Exactly, Edmund said. He pulled out another document. Great Northern Life Insurance. The $10 million policy. It was never paid out. What? The insurance company flagged it. Suspicious evidence. Insufficient body confirmation. They've been investigating for 3 years. The money stayed frozen, but the debt I paid, $5.5 million. Edmund's jaw tightened. Quincy traced it. Shell companies, offshore accounts. Someone created fake debt to drain you while the real insurance money stayed locked. Garrett, I whispered, there's more. Edmund showed me a signed waiver, my signature at the bottom. 2 years ago, Garrett had you sign this. Remember? I stared at it vaguely. He'd said it was routine paperwork. This waiver relinquishes your right to contest insurance refusal. If they'd ever gotten that $10 million, you'd have no legal standing. My blood froze. He set me up. He did, Edmund said. The dentist was paid off. The DNA was deliberately contaminated, and Garrett positioned himself to control everything. I closed the folder. My hands were steady. They planned this for years, I said quietly. Edmund nodded. Quincy still digging, tracing money, finding accomplices. But Colin, this is bigger than we thought. They didn't just fake their deaths. They framed you to pay for it. I looked up at Edmund. Then we take everything from them legally, completely. That's exactly what we're going to do. But one question burned in my mind. Whose body was it? Or was there no body at all? That same week, I went to see Dr. Vincent Prescott for what I thought was a routine checkup. His office in Greenwich was familiar. Clean white walls. The smell of antiseptic framed medical degrees. Dr. Prescott had been our family physician for 15 years. He'd treated my father's heart condition. He'd been the one to explain to my mother why Bernard would never fully recover from the stress of losing Amaron Jasper. He looked up from his clipboard as I sat on the examination table. Colin, you've lost 20 pounds since I last saw you. Are you eating? I said. I'm just always tired. How tired? I shrugged. I wake up exhausted. I can't focus at work. I forget things, meetings, deadlines. Sometimes I can't remember conversations I had the day before. Dr. Prescott sat down the clipboard, his expression sharpening. How long has this been going on? 3 years since I trailed off. Since the accident, he finished quietly. Colin, those symptoms, chronic fatigue, difficulty, concentrating memory loss, depression, insomnia. I assumed they were grief, trauma, but combined with the weight loss. He stood. Let's run a full blood panel just to be safe. I didn't think much of it. 2 days later, he called me back to his office. His face was grim. Colin, I found something concerning in your blood work. I sat across from his desk, my stomach tightening. What? Benzodiazepines, drugs in the Xanax and Valium family, anti-anxiety medication, sedatives. He slid a printed lab report across the desk. But this isn't an acute dose. This is chronic. Lowell, someone's been giving you small amounts over a long period of time. My mouth went dry. I've never taken anti-anxiety medication. Amar always said I should, but I refused. Dr. H. Prescott leaned forward. Then someone's been giving it to you without your knowledge. The words hung in the air. I thought back, mornings before work. Amara handing me coffee already prepared, always with a smile. Drink up, honey. You need the energy. Evenings at home. Smoothies, herbal tea. This will help you sleep, sweetheart. I trusted her. I drank everything she gave me. Chronic benzodiazepine exposure causes exactly the symptoms you've described. Dr. Prescott said fatigue, cognitive impairment, depression, memory issues. Over time, it creates dependency. You become manageable. She wanted me weak, I said slowly. She wanted me unable to think clearly, unable to fight back. Dr. Prescott nodded. It would also explain why you accepted things you might otherwise have questioned. The debt, the waiver, the weight. I looked up sharply. But she's been dead for 3 years. Why is it still in my system? Dr. Prescott was silent for a moment. Then, has anyone else been preparing food for you regularly? My blood turned cold. My mother, I whispered. Judith. The memory hit me like a freight train. Before Amara died, she'd left a bottle of pills with my mother, large white capsules. I'd seen them on the kitchen counter. Make sure Eric takes these every day, Mum, Amira said, her voice sweet and concerned. They're vitamins for his health. He's been so stressed. My mother, grieving and desperate to help her son, had continued giving them to me, every morning for 3 years, in my orange juice, in my oatmeal. She hadn't known Amara had turned my own mother into her weapon. I stood up, my hands shaking. She didn't just steal my money, she poisoned my body. She used my mother to do it for years. Doc Prescott watched me carefully. Colin, I need to ask, are you safe if this woman is capable of this level of planning? She's in Canada. She thinks I don't know she's alive. My voice was cold, flat, but not for long. I walked out of his office into the pale winter sunlight. How long had she planned this? And what else had I missed? I couldn't sleep that night. One question haunted me. Was Brian really mine? At 2 o'clock in the morning, I found myself standing in his room. I hadn't changed anything in 3 years. The race car bed still sat against the wall, perfectly made. Toy trucks lined the shelf. A dinosaur poster hung crooked above his desk, exactly where he left it. I sat on his bed, pulling the photo album from his nightstand. I'd looked at these pictures 1,000 times. Brianna's a newborn, his first steps, his 5th birthday party. But tonight, I looked differently. I studied every detail. His eyes hazel warm brown with flexes of gold. Mine were blue, his hair dark, wavy, thick. Mine was light brown, straight, his face structured delicate, angular, like Diana's. His smile. I stopped. Whose smile was that? The question felt like betrayal. I'd been there when he was born. I'd held him in the delivery room. I'd changed his diapers, taught him to walk, sat through hours of Sesame Street. But what if Diana's lies went deeper than I'd imagined? I hated myself for thinking it, but I couldn't stop. I walked to the bathroom attached to his room. His toothbrush still sat in the holder, a blue one with a cartoon spaceship on the handle. I'd kept it, couldn't throw it away. I took it, then pulled a strand of my own hair. The next morning, I sent both to a private lab, with instructions for a confidential paternity test. The next 7 days were the longest of my life. I worked like a robot, moving through meetings without hearing a word. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every email made my heart race. At night, I sat in Jasper's room and whispered the same prayer. Please, let him be mine. Please. 1 week later, the envelope arrived at Edmund's office. I drove to Stamford with my hands shaking so badly I nearly ran a red light. Edmund was waiting the unopened envelope on his desk. Do you want me to open it? He asked gently. No. My voice was, I need to see it myself. I picked up the envelope. It felt impossibly light. How could something so small hold so much weight? I tore it open, pulled out the pages. Read the first line. Paternity test results. Then the second alleged father, Eric Dawson. Child Brian Dawson. Probability of paternity 0.0%. Eric Dawson is excluded as the biological father. The words blurred. I read them again, hoping I'd misunderstood. 0%. Not my son. Not my blood. Colin. Edmund's voice came from far away. I'm so sorry. I sat down slowly. I didn't cry, didn't yell, just sat there staring at the paper. I raised another man's child, I said finally. My voice sounded strange, flat, empty. Edmund said nothing. For 5 years, I loved him with everything I had. I taught him to walk, to talk, to laugh. My hands tightened on the paper. I was there for his first word, his first step, his first day of school. And they took him from me, not because he was my blood. I looked up at Edmund, but because hurting me was the point. Edmund leaned forward, his expression pained. We can use this. If Brianne isn't biologically yours, you have no legal obligation, no custody rights. We can lie. No. I stood up. My voice was cold now, sharp as glass. I raised him. I was his father for 5 years. Blood or no blood, he's still my son. Edmund stared at me. I'm getting him back, I said quietly. Not for revenge, not to hurt Deanna, but because that little boy deserves a father who actually loves him, who doesn't see him as a weapon. The court won't. I don't care what the court says. I folded the paper, carefully, sliding it back into the envelope. Brianna is mine in every way that matters. I turned toward the door, then stopped. Edmund, I said, I want to know who is Jasper's biological father. A few days after I received Jasper's DNA results, I called Quincy. I need to know who the biological father is. Can you find out? It'll take time, Quincy replied. But if there's a trail, I'll find it. For days, 4 days of waiting while Quincy dug through financial records, travel logs, surveillance footage, 4 days of barely sleeping. Then his call came. Colin, I found the answer, and it's worse than you imagined. An hour later, I sat across from him at a quiet coffee shop in Greenwich. Quincy was 68, a former FBI agent turned private investigator. He opened his laptop, his expression dark. I'm going to show you something. It's going to hurt. Just tell me. He turned the screen toward me. Garrett Sullivan has a secret account in the Cayman Islands, GS Holdings LLC. Over the past 3 years, it's received $4.5 million. My stomach turned. From where? Shell companies in Delaware, the same companies that claimed you owed them money. He pulled up another document. The $5.5 million you paid went through those shell companies into the Cayman account, then transferred to Canada. Oak Bay, Victoria. The room tilted. There's more. Flight records. Garrett's flown to Victoria 32 times over the past 5 years. Every 2 months. Started 6 years ago. 6 years ago when Amarawa was pregnant with Jasper. Quincy clicked to another file. Hotel surveillance from the Fairmont Empress in Victoria. 6 years ago, Garrett checked in with a woman. Facial recognition identified her as Deanna. He showed me the photo. Blurry but unmistakable. Garrett and heir entering a hotel suite. 3-day stay. And this, Quincy said, pulling up a final document. Jasper's birth certificate. He wasn't born in Connecticut. He was born in Victoria, British Columbia. I stared at the screen. That's not possible. Airside, she wanted to visit college friends in Canada before the baby came. I stayed home for a project. She came back with Bryant, were weeks old. She gave birth there. Quincy said with Garrett. The words hung in the air. Garrett Sullivan is Jasper's biological father. They've been having an affair for at least 7 years. The pregnancy, the plane crashed, the debt, all planned together. I couldn't speak. Colin, I remembered Garrett standing beside me at my wedding 12 years ago. My best man grinning as I said my vows, holding me upright at the funeral when my legs gave out. 3 years of him showing up with coffee, with sympathy, with the same goddamn face that had lied to me for 7 years. He had a key to my house. He'd checked on things whenever I traveled. My hands clenched into fists. He slept with her in my bed, in my house. Probably, Quincy said quietly. I stood up the chair, scraping loudly. Other patrons glanced over. I didn't care. My best friend, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, he fathered a child and watched me raise his son for 5 years, like some sick joke. Edmund, sitting silently at the table, leaned forward. Colin, I know this is painful, but I want them to pay, I said, my voice cold and flat. Not just prison. I want them to lose everything. The way I lost everything. I looked at Quincy, at Edmund, at the evidence spread across the laptop. Everything. Every last thing in their lives. They built on mine. We needed bait. Something irresistible. Something Garrett couldn't refuse. A week after Quincy's revelations, the three of us sat around Edmund's conference table. The coffee had gone cold. Papers covered every surface bank. Records, flight logs, surveillance photos. Edmund leaned back in his chair. We have evidence, but we need Garrett back on American soil to arrest him. Canada won't extradite for fraud. We need him to come willingly, Quincy said. We need bait, I repeated. Something he can't turn down. Quincy looked at me. What does Garrett love more than money? I thought about the man I'd called my best friend for 20 years. Status, prestige. He always wanted to be a collector. Respected. He has a Porsche collection in Victoria. But his dream car, I paused. A 1967 Shelby GT500. He said he'd pay any price for one. Edmund frowned. A real GT500 is worth 2 to 3 million. We can't afford that. We don't need a real one, I said slowly. We just need him to think it's real. 2 days later, we drove to the Connecticut countryside. Dr. Philip Hendris lived in a converted barn surrounded by acres of farmland. At 64, he was a retired automotive historian, an expert on classic American muscle cars. He'd been my father's friend. His garage was a shrine. Framed photos of vintage Shelbys, Corvettes, Mustangs, authentication certificates lined the walls. I explained the plan. Rix shook his head. Colin, you're asking me to forge authentication documents. That's fraud. They faked their own deaths. They stole millions. They poisoned me. My voice was steady. This is justice. Rix was silent for a long moment. Your father was a good man. He wouldn't want revenge to consume you. My father also taught me that evil unpunished becomes emboldened. Hendricks sighed, looked at the photos on his walls. What do you need? The plan was simple, elegant. Step 1. Rent a real 1967 Shelby GT500 from a private collector just for photos. Step 2. Professional photography, multiple angles, engine details, interior shots. Step 3. Create a fake VIN vehicle, identification number. Rix had access to Shelby registries. He knew how the numbers were formatted. Step 4. Rix would create an authentication certificate. Official-looking Shelby American registry, original engine and transmission. Providence barn find stored since 1985. Estate sale due to financial need. Step 5. Fabricate ownership history. Papers showing the car passed through several hands. Each owner documented price $2.8 million. High enough to be credible, low enough to be tempting. Back at Edmund's office, we reviewed everything. Once we spread the word, Edmund said, collectors will inquire. We'll have to turn down real buyers. But when Garrett bites, we demand cash transaction in person, Connecticut. The moment he sets foot in Greenwich, Quincy added, FBI arrests him for wire fraud, money laundering, insurance fraud. Interpol's already building a case. I stared at the photographs of the Shelby, midnight blue, chrome gleaming, a beautiful machine that for our purposes didn't exist. The car isn't real, I said quietly, but his greed is, and greed, Quincy replied, will be his downfall. Edmund gathered the documents, sliding them into a folder. We'll need to plant the information carefully, make it look like a legitimate private sale, exclusive word of mouth only. I thought about Garrett and Victoria living in my stolen money, raising my son, sleeping beside my wife, thinking he'd won. The trap is set, I said. Now we just need to spread the word. Percy Rowland was the best car broker in the business and the biggest gossip. A few days after our planning session, I met him at Perse, the restaurant overlooking Columbus Circle in Manhattan. Expensive lunch, my treat. Percy was 55, sharp-suited with silver hair and a smile that had closed 1,000 deals. He knew every serious collector on the East Coast. I'd met him years ago through client connections. Eric Dawson. He stood, shaking my hand vigorously. Long time no see since that Malibu project. How's life treating you? Busy, actually. I have a unique opportunity I think you'd appreciate. Percy leaned forward, eyes gleaming. I'm listening. I'm representing an estate sale. Very discreet. Family has a 1967 Shelby GT500. Original owner stored it in '85. Never drove it again. Barn find. Under 20,000 meters. Percy's eyes widened. An actual barn find GT500. Those are legends. I slid a folder across the table. Inside photographs Rix's authentication certificate. Percy examined everything carefully. Slowly, his fingers traced the edges of the photos. Oh my God, look at that rust patina, the dust patterns. This is real. 2.8 million cash, only discreet sale. Percy looked up. Why not auction? Barrett Jackson would go insane for this. Family doesn't want publicity. Tax reasons, you understand. Why you bow family friend? They trust me to find the right buyer. Can I see it in person? After a serious offer, it's in climate-controlled storage. The family won't move it for looks. Percy nodded slowly. I know 3 buyers immediately. Only share it with serious collectors. People with cash ready. The family wants someone who will treasure it, not flip it. Exclusive collector circles only. I'll send private inquiries. Perfect. Let me know if anyone's interested. Within 48 hours, Percy had sent emails. Private collector forums, wealthy car enthusiasts, specialty vehicle investment groups. Subject line, one sign lifetime opportunity. 67 Shelby barn find. He included 1 teaser photo. Just 1. The front quarter panel, dusty and beautiful. The rumor spread like wildfire. I imagined Percy at cocktail parties leaning in conspiratorially. You won't believe what came across my desk at car shows, whispering to the right people. Completely off-market, haven't even listed it yet. That's what I'd counted on. Percy couldn't help himself. He was a broker, yes, but more than that, he was a storyteller, and this was too good a story to keep quiet. Within 48 hours, every serious collector on the East Coast knew about the mysterious GT500, and then 3 days after my lunch with Percy, I received an email. The sender, Mr. K. The subject line, Shelby inquiry, serious buyer. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't open it. Not yet. First I called Edmund. It's him, I said. He took the bait. The email was professional, polite, but I recognized the writing style. EMAT 1, Mr. K. Subject inquiry. 1967. Shelby GT 500. Dear Mr. Dawson, I received information about your GT500 through a reliable source. I am a serious collector, with cash ready immediately. Before proceeding, I require complete Vine service history documentation, clear photos of engine bay and undercarriage, confirmation of matching numbers. I have been searching for this exact model for years. Respectfully, K. Morrison. I stared at the screen, the formality, the technical questions. Something about the phrasing felt familiar. Email to Colin, Mr. Morrison VN7, RO2C125XXX, protected until serious offer service records. Original owner maintained regularly until storage in 1985. Documentation available. Photos attached. Engine bay, undercarriage, interior details, matching numbers. Confirmed by Dr. Philip Hendricks, certified automotive historian. This is a unique opportunity. I've received multiple inquiries. Respectfully, C. Dawson. Email 3. Mr. K. Impressive. The Holly carburetor appears original. Can you confirm 428 Cobra Jet specifications? Also, any frame rust from storage? I called Edmund. He's testing me. These are questions someone taught would ask. Then I remembered. I'd taught Garrett about classic cars years ago. Weekend conversations over beer. I'd explained carburetors matching numbers, what collectors looked for. He was using my own knowledge against me. Email 4, Colin 428, CJ confirmed. 335 HP, Holly, 735, CFM carburetor, correct? Frame surface oxidation only, no structural rust. Climate-controlled storage, preserved integrity. Unique details. Small dent on driver's door from original owner, adds authenticity. We will not repair it. The dent was fake. Didn't exist on the real car we'd photographed, but Garrett couldn't verify that until he saw it in person. Firm price, $2.8 million USD cash. Email 5. Mr. K, I appreciate unrestored authenticity. That dent is actually a selling point for me. I'm prepared to meet your price. However, I'm currently in British Columbia. Can you arrange shipping? My heart jumped. British Columbia, Victoria. It was him. Email 6. Colin, no shipping. Too risky for a vehicle this valuable. In-person transaction only. Location, Greenwich, Connecticut. Cash or wire transfer upon inspection. If you're serious, this car won't be available long. Email 7. Mr. K. Understood. I'll arrange travel to Connecticut. Available next week. Please confirm address and viewing time. I've waited years for this car. 1 week is no problem. KM. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the email. He'd taken the bait. All of it. The photos, the authentication, the fake dent that didn't exist. The price that was too good to pass up. His greed had overpowered his caution. I called Edmund and Quincy into my office. He bit, I said, turning my laptop toward them. Hook, line, and sinker. Edmund read the email, his expression grim. British Columbia. That confirms it. Quincy nodded. I'll coordinate with FBI. The moment he steps foot in Greenwich, we move. He'll come, I said quietly. He can't help himself. He's been stealing from me for 7 years. He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks he's smarter than me. I looked at the email again. At the signature, K.M. Garrett had always been arrogant. I always thought he was the clever one. Next week, I said. Mr. K agreed to meet at my house in Greenwich, where everything ends. While Garrett scrambled desperately for cash, we were building his cage. Quincy's surveillance reports came in daily. Every transaction, every movement, every mistake. Days 1, 2. The fire sale. Garrett was liquidating everything in Victoria. The Oak Bay condo listed $200,000 below market. Must sell immediately. His Porsche 911 collection. 3 cars appeared on specialty forms. Furniture, artwork, everything sold at a loss. Quincy sent photos. Garrett looked thinner, stressed. Days 34 banking activity. The Cayman Islands account showed a massive withdrawal. $1.2 million. International banking alerts triggered immediately. Quincy's contacts at Interpol flagged the movement. Royal Bank of Canada Victoria branch account closed. Funds wired to a new account. American. He was moving money fast. Too fast. Day 5. Desperation. Quincy's photos showed Garrett entering a rundown office in Vancouver. 2 men with neck tattoos stood outside smoking. Loan sharks. Garrett borrowed $500,000, 20% interest monthly. Collateral Deanna's jewelry and a promise of a big payout coming soon. I looked at the photos. Garrett shaking hands with criminals. The same man who'd worn a tuxedo at my wedding. He's an over his head. Quincy said. Good, I replied. Day 6. The conversation. Quincy had planted a listening device in Garrett's rental car. The recording came through that evening. Dinah's voice. Why do we need $2.8 million? We have enough. Garrett, this is a once-in-a-lifetime car. It'll triple in value. Dana, you borrowed money from those people. They're dangerous. Garrett, 1 week I buy the Shelby, flip it for $67 million, pay everyone back. Silence. Garrett, this is our ticket to real wealth, not just comfortable. Rishai listened to the recording 3 times. His greed, his arrogance, his absolute certainty that he was smarter than everyone else. FBI coordination. Edmund briefed FBI Financial Crimes Unit that afternoon. Agent Sarah Smith reviewed the evidence package. Insurance fraud, money laundering, through shell companies, loan shark connections, fraudulent debt creation. We have enough for arrest warrants, she said. We just need him on American soil. He'll be in Greenwich Saturday, 2 p.m. She nodded. We'll be ready. Final report. Quincy's call came Saturday morning. Garrett Sullivan landed at JFK an hour ago. Rented a Mercedes S, currently driving north on I-95. Etah, Greenwich, 90 minutes. Undercover officers are positioned around your house. Plain clothes, unmarked cars. The moment he's inside and we have confirmation of the transaction attempt, we move. I stood in my living room looking at Jasper's photo on the mantel. 5 years, old, grinning, missing his front tooth. My phone rang. Edmund, he's 30 minutes out. Are you ready? I looked around the room. The house where Amara had poised me, where Garrett had sat at my table drinking my wine, lying to my face, where it would all end. I'd been ready for 3 years. Every transaction was another nail in his coffin. The apartment sale, the Porsche, listings, the loan shark meeting, the wire transfer. Each one documented, photographed, recorded. The handcuffs were waiting. The house was silent. I had one last thing to do before Garrett arrived. It was 8 p.m. Friday, the night before everything would end. Mom, Dad, can you come to the living room? I need to show you something. Bernard was already there, his wheelchair parked near the fireplace. Judith came down the stairs, worry etched on her face. Colin, You look so serious. What's wrong? Please sit down. Judith sat on the sofa, hands twisting in her lap. Bernard watched me, his eyes alert, despite his damaged body. I opened my laptop. This is from last week. Victoria, British Columbia. I pressed play. The video showed Deanna, Garrett, Jasper in the children's boutique, alive together, laughing. Judith's face went white. She stood up trembling. That's not possible. They're dead. They faked it, I said quietly. All of it. The plane crash, the bodies, everything. Judith staggered back to the sofa, couldn't breathe. Bernard made a wounded sound from his wheelchair, a sob without words. But the funeral, Judith whispered. The DNA. How are falsified records? Fake DNA samples planned for months. And Garrett, her voice broke. Your best friend is her lover. Has been for years. Judith collapsed forward, sobbing. Bernard's face crumpled. I watched my parents break all over again. Then I said what I'd been dreading. Mom, I need to ask you something. She looked up, tears streaming. After Amara died, did she leave anything for you to give me? Judith thought. She left a bottle of vitamins. Said you needed them for stress. Maybe promised you'd take one every night. My jaw tightened. Do you still have that bottle? In the kitchen cabinet. Why, I retrieved it. Handed her Dr. Prescott's report. These aren't vitamins. They're sedatives. She was poisoning me. Judith stared at the report, at the bottle, at me, and she used you to keep doing it after she died. The sound that came out of my mother was inhuman, a wail of horror and guilt. That seemed to come from her bones. Oh my God. Oh my God. She doubled over. I poisoned my own son for 3 years. I knelt down, wrapped my arms around her. Mom, you didn't know. You're a victim too. She manipulated you the same way she manipulated me. Bernard was crying silently in his wheelchair, understanding everything. I reached over, squeezed his hand. He squeezed back, weak. But there tomorrow, I said. Garrett's coming here. He thinks he's buying a car. He doesn't know it's a trap. The FBI will arrest him. A mayor will be arrested in Canada. Everything ends tomorrow. Judith looked at me through swollen eyes. What about Jasper, our grandson? My voice caught. He's not my biological son. Judith's mouth opened in shock. But I raised him. I love him, and I will get him back. The room was quiet, except for my mother's ragged breathing. Bernard reached for Judith's hand with his good arm. Tomorrow, I repeated, after 3 years, after all the lies, after everything they took from us, tomorrow they pay. Judith clung to me, this woman who'd spent 3 years unknowingly poisoning her own child. Bernard watched from his wheelchair, a man broken by grief and stress, unable even to speak his rage. We were all victims of the same 2 people, but only I had the power to make them pay. Tomorrow, everything ended tomorrow. The black Mercedes pulled into my driveway at exactly 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Garrett stepped out, grinning like he owned the world. I watched from the living room window as he straightened his expensive navy suit, adjusted his cuffs, and reached back into the car for a leather briefcase. Cash, probably, or forged paperwork. It didn't matter. He stood there for a moment, staring. Up at the house was something that looked almost like nostalgia. He'd been here hundreds of times. Barbecues, Thanksgiving, game nights. My best man, my friend, my betrayer. The doorbell rang. I opened the door, keeping my face neutral. Colin Garrett's smile was wide, almost genuine. But he got, it's been too long. He moved in for a hug. I stepped back. Garrett, I said flatly, come in. His smile faltered for half a second, then returned. He waved it off with a shrug. He's still grieving. I get it, man. I really do. I led him inside, down the hallway into the living room. The same room where we'd watched the Super Bowl in 2019. The same couch where he'd consoled me. The day I lost Amra and Jasper. The same armchair he always claimed as his. He sat in it now like he belonged there. Jesus, this place? He said, looking around. So many memories. He leaned back, relaxed, confident. Remember Super Bowl 2019? We got so drunk Amare kicked us out. To the garage, he laughed. God, I miss her, man. I miss both of them. I remember, I said. His eyes softened with fake sympathy. I think about them every day, Colin. I really do. I walked to the bar cart and poured 2 glasses of Macallan 18, his favorite. He noticed, he remembered. He took the glass, swirling it appreciatively. You always had good taste. He took a long sip. I didn't touch mine. I just watched him. So, Garrett said, setting his glass down on the side table. Let's talk about this, Shelby. I've been dreaming about it all week. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. A barn-find GT50R. That's the holy grail, Colin. I can't believe you found one. Life's full of surprises, I said. He grinned. Damn right it is. I sat down across from him, elbows on my knees. So, how's life in British Columbia? Garrett froze, just for a second. Then he recovered, smooth as ever. British Columbia. Your email, I said evenly. K. Morrison, Victoria, BC. Oh right. Yeah. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I moved out there after everything. Needed a fresh start. Fresh start, I repeated slowly. Interesting choice of words. It's cheaper than here, he said quickly. Better pace of life, you know, I can imagine. I tilted my head, made any new friends, settled down, started a family. Garrett's smile tightened. Nah, still single. You know, me? Married to the job. Right as said the job. He shifted in his seat. Why all the questions? Man, let's talk about the car. Where is it? Can I see it? I set my glass down on the coffee table slowly, deliberately. Then I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto his. Garrett, I said quietly. Should we talk about the car? I paused. Or should we talk about Omar and Brian first? The glass slipped from Garrett's hand. He caught it at the last second, whiskey slashing over the rim onto his expensive suit. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally he stammered, Colin, what the hell are you talking about? I didn't blink. It didn't move. You know exactly what I'm talking about. His hand froze halfway to his lap, still clutching the glass. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. Sweat beaded at his temple. Colin, his voice cracked. I can explain. I didn't let him explain. I showed him the truth, piece by piece. It was 2:15 p.m., 15 minutes since Garrett walked through my door. I opened my laptop, turned it toward Garrett, and pressed play. The video from Victoria filled the screen. Garrett, kneeling on the sidewalk tying Jasper's shoe. Emma smiling down at them, her hand resting on Garrett's shoulder. The three of them laughing. A family. Garrett's face went white. He stared at the screen, frozen. There was no denying what he was seeing. Colin, he said harassingly, it's not what you think, isn't it? I said coldly. Because, to me, it looks like my dead wife and my dead son. I leaned forward with my best friend. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I slid a thick folder across the table. Quincy Donahue is very thorough, I said. Garrett flipped it open with shaking hands. Bang! Statements from the Cayman Islands. Money trail shell companies to Cayman, to Victoria. Flight records, 32 trips to Victoria over 5 years. Hotel surveillance photos. Garrett and together 6 years ago. You investigated me, he whispered. You faked your death, I said. What did you expect? His phone rang. The caller ID flashed. Vancouver. He reached to silence it, but I stopped him. Answer it, I insist. He stared at me, then at the phone. Finally, with trembling hands, he answered and put it on speaker. A rough, brutal voice filled the room. Mr. Sullivan, we have a problem. The cops are asking about our loan. You said this was clean money. If you lied to us, you're a dead man. The line went dead. Garrett dropped the phone. How? How did you? I stood and walked to the fireplace. I know about the money, I said quietly. The fake accident. All of it. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded paper. I tossed it onto the table. But there was one thing I needed to confirm. He picked it up. His eyes scanned the page. DNA test results. Probability of paternity %. Brian isn't my son, I said. He's yours. Garrett went completely still. And then he laughed. A bitter, vicious laugh. You really thought Brian was your son? He said, standing. His mask was gone now. God, Colin, you're pathetic. I watched you play daddy to my boy for 5 years, teaching him to ride a bike, reading him bedtime stories. My son, it was worth every damn second. My hands clenched into fists, but my voice stayed cold. You're right, it's not my blood, but I was there for his first word, his first step. Where were you, Garrett, hiding like a coward? You donated sperm. I was his father. The front door burst open. FBI agents flooded into the room, weapons drawn. Agent Sarah Smith stepped forward. Garrett Sullivan, you're under arrest. She read the charges. Insurance fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Handcuffs snapped around Garrett's wrists. He thrashed against the agents. "This is a setup. I want my lawyer." "You'll need one," I said quietly. As they dragged him toward the door, he screamed, "Wait! The car! The Shelby! Where is it? I have the money." I walked up close so only he could hear me. "There is no Shelby, Garrett. Just like there was no friendship, only lies." His face collapsed. Total devastation. They hauled him out the door, and his voice echoed down the driveway. "You bastard. That car was real." The house fell silent. Edmund stepped out from my office. He'd been there the entire time, witnessing everything. "It's done," he said. "The FBI's everything they need." I sank into the armchair, the same one Garrett had sat in 20 minutes ago. "How do you feel?" Edmund asked. "Nothing," I said. "I feel nothing." "That's normal," Edmund said gently. "Closure takes time." I looked up at him. "My work isn't finished. Diana's still in Canada, and I want my son back. I'm arrested 2 days later at Vancouver International Airport, attempting to flee to Mexico." Edmund called me with the news. His voice was steady, but urgent. "It's done. Canadian authorities have..." "Her? What happened?" I asked, gripping the phone. She'd been stopped at security with Brian and a fake passport under the name Diana Morrison. One-way tickets to CBO. Airport security flagged the passport immediately. The RCMP moved in within minutes. My chest tightened. "Where is Brianna? Temporary foster care in Victoria," Edmund said gently. "He'll stay there while the case proceeds. He's safe. Colin, I promise you he's safe." I closed my eyes, imagining my son confused and scared, pulled away from the only life he'd known, even if that life was built on lies. 3 months later, the trial began. The federal courthouse in Connecticut was surrounded by media vans. Headlines screamed, "Wife fakes death, steals millions." Reporters lined the steps. I entered through a side door, avoiding the cameras, and shouted questions. The courtroom was packed. The spectators filled every seat. This wasn't just a trial. It was a spectacle. Amarawa was led in wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, her wrists cuffed. Her hair was cut short, no longer the glossy red-brown I remembered. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked 10 years older, hollowed out. When she saw me sitting in the front row, she turned away quickly, her jaw tight. Her lawyer was expensive, high-end, tailored suit, silver hair. I wondered how she was paying for it. Maybe Garrett's offshore accounts hadn't been fully seized. Garrett testified first. He wore prisoner suit clothing, his ankles shackled. He shuffled to the stand, eyes downcast. The prosecutor, a sharp woman, in her 40s, asked, "Mr. Sullivan, whose idea was it to fake the deaths?" Garrett's voice was flat. "Diana's. She planned everything." Emma shot to her feet, her lawyer trying to pull her back down. "Liar, it was your idea." The judge, a gay-haired man with wire-rimmed glasses, slammed his gavel. "Order Miss Dawson, sit down, or you'll be removed." Garrett continued, his voice emotionless. "She wanted out of the marriage. She wanted the insurance money. I loved her. I went along with it." He was trying to minimize his role, paint himself as the lovesick fool. The jury didn't look convinced. Several of them stared at him with disgust. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, calm and composed. I'd practiced this with Edmund. I described the poisoning in detail, the chronic fatigue, the memory loss, the years of thinking I was losing my mind. I described the fake debt, the relentless creditors, the 3 years of hell. Then I held up a photo of Jasper, 5 years old, grinning on his bike. "This is the boy I raised as my son," I said, my voice steady but raw. "They didn't just steal money. They didn't just fake their deaths. They stole my family. They stole 3 years of my life. They stole my son's childhood." My voice cracked on the last word. Several jurors wiped their eyes. One woman in the back row openly cried. Dr. Prescott testified about the chronic benzodiazepine poisoning. He used charts, medical terms, explained the dosing pattern in excruciating detail. The dosing pattern rendered Mr. Dawson weakened, dependent, and cognitively impaired. He said, "A classic pattern of coercive control and abuse." The jury deliberated. For 6 hours. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent. Their verdicts came down like hammers. Emeridazole, insurance fraud. Guilty. Money laundering. Guilty child. Endangerment. Guilty. Assault by poisoning. Guilty. Sentence life in prison without parole. Garrett Sullivan. All charges. Guilty. sentenced 25 years federal prison. Deanna's face went blank, completely empty. Garrett dropped his head into his hands. 2 weeks later, the custody hearing took place in a separate family court proceeding. Deanna's lawyer, now a different public defender, argued weakly. Mr. Dawson has no biological relation to the child. Edmund stood, his voice firm and clear. Mr. Dawson raised Brian for the first 5 years of his life. He is the only father Brianna has ever known. The biological parents are convicted felons serving life in 25 years respectively. They are unfit for custody. A social worker from Victoria testified via video link. Brian repeatedly asks for Dad, Colin. The child has clear attachment, vivid memories, and expresses a strong desire to return to Mr. Dawson's care. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, reviewed the file for a long moment. The courtroom held its breath. In the best interests of the child, she said finally. Full custody is awarded to Eric Dawson. She looked up directly at me. Parental rights of Amara Dawson and Garrett Sullivan are hereby terminated. I stood outside the courthouse afterward, Edmund beside me. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Camera flashes exploded in my face. I gave a brief statement reading from a card Edmund had prepared. Justice has been served, I said. But my priority now is healing and bringing my son home. The gavel fell. Justice had been done, but the victory felt hollow, empty. There was one more person he needed to see, Jasper. 6 months later, I stood outside a temporary foster home in Victoria, my hands trembling. I'd driven back to the city where everything had started. The irony wasn't lost on me. Oak Bay was quiet that afternoon, the streets lined with oak trees just beginning to bud with spring. The foster home was a modest single-story house with a small front garden just a few blocks from the boutique where I'd seen them, where my world had shattered and rebuilt itself. I took a deep breath and walked to the door. Mrs. Patterson, the social worker, opened it. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. Mr. Dawson, she said warmly. Brian, very excited but also nervous. He remembers you, but it's been 3 years. Please be patient. I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. She led me inside to the living room, and there he was. Brian sat on the couch, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He was 8 now, taller. His face had lost some of its roundness, his features sharper. His hazel eyes, the same ones I remembered, were wide and uncertain. He wore jeans and a plain grey t-shirt, nothing like the expensive wool coat from before. His hair was shorter, neatly trimmed. He looked smaller somehow, despite being bigger. When he saw me, he froze, his eyes locked onto mine, searching, afraid, hopeful. I knelt down slowly, bringing myself to his level. I didn't rush, I didn't force anything. Hey champ, I said softly. His lip trembled. Dad, you came. Of course I came, I said. My voice broke. I brought something for you. I reached into my backpack and pulled out a thick photo album. I sat beside him on the couch, moving slowly, giving him space. Can I show you? I asked. He nodded, barely perceptible. I opened the first page. A photo of Brianna as a newborn wrapped in a blue blanket in the hospital, my hands cradling him. This is the first day I held you, I said quietly. Brian touched the photo with one finger. His breathing quickened. He didn't say anything. I turned the page. A photo of Brianna, 18 months, laughing in my arms at the park. His tiny hands reaching for my face. Then the next page. Me teaching Brianna to ride a bike. His tiny hands gripping the handlebars. My hands steadying him from behind. His face a mix of fear and joy. Jasper's breath hitched. I remember, he whispered. He held the back. He said, I've got you, champ. My throat burned. I always had you? I turned to the next page. Another photo. Brian and I building a sandcastle at the beach, both of us covered in sand, grinning. We went to the beach a lot, Brian said quietly. I remember bearing your feet. You did, I said, smiling through tears, every time. Then I turned to the birthday photo. Jasper's 5th birthday. A race car cake with 5 candles. A mom and I on either side of him. I focused on Jasper's face. Pure joy. You made that cake, Brian said, his voice shaking. He'd had 5 candles. We sang the race car song. Tears spilled down his cheeks. Where did you go, Dad? His voice cracked. Why didn't you come back? Mum said. He choked on the words. She said, He didn't want me anymore. I pulled him into my arms. The first physical contact. He didn't resist. He collapsed against me, sobbing. That was a lie, Jasper, I said, my voice breaking. I never stopped wanting you. Your mum, she did something wrong. She had to go away. But I looked for you every single day. Every single day. I never stopped being your dad. He pulled back slightly, looking up at me with red, swollen eyes. Are you my real dad? I held his gaze. I didn't lie. You know what? I said, I raised you. I love you. That makes me your real dad. He stared at me for a long moment, processing. Then he whispered, Can I come home with you? My chest tightened so hard I thought it would break. That's why I'm here, champ. If you want to, we're going home together. He nodded, crying harder now. Then he threw his arms around me, burying his face in my shoulder. I missed you so much, he sobbed. I held him tight, finally letting myself cry. I missed you, too, buddy, every single day. Mrs. Patterson appeared with a small suitcase. It wasn't much, a fresh start. I took Jasper's hand, and we walked to the car together. He looked up at the house one last time, then at me. Do I still have my race car bed? He asked quietly. Never touched it, I said. Your room is exactly the same. His eyes widened. Really? Really? He squeezed my hand tighter. As I started the car, he looked over at me. Can we get ice cream? I laughed, a real laugh, for the first time in years. Absolutely. My son was back in my arms, not by blood, but by love. And that was all that mattered. We were going home together. 1 year later, life had found its rhythm again. Sunday morning, spring sunlight poured through the kitchen windows. I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes. Jasper's favorite. Jasper, now 9, set the table. Dad, guess what? I got an A on my science project. The volcano. I grinned. I knew it. Can we build another one together? He asked. Absolutely, champ. A small voice came from the doorway. Can I help? Luno stood there, 7 years old, with curly brown hair and a shy smile. I'd adopted her 6 months ago, from the same foster system where Brian had been placed. Of course, sweetheart, I said. Can you pour the orange juice? She nodded carefully and filled each glass, her face glowing with pride. Brian helped her place the glasses on the table like this, Luna, see. She giggled. They were becoming siblings. Slowly, naturally, the doorbell rang. Judith arrived with cookies, her cheeks pink, her smile genuine. She was healthier now, stronger. My angels, she said, hugging both kids. Bernard had passed away peacefully 3 months ago. Judith squeezed my shoulder. Your father would be so proud. That afternoon, I watched Brian hatch Luna to ride a bike, the same bike I taught him on. I've got you, Luna. Brian cawed, steadying the seat, just like Dad held me. Luna wobbled, laughed, and kept trying. I stood back, letting Brian lead. Judith stood beside me. He gave them a family. They gave me a family, I said quietly. That evening, I tucked the kids into bed. Brian looked up at me. Dad, you'll teach Luna to ride tomorrow, right? Of course, champ, I said. That's what dads do. We take care of our family. I love you, Dad. I kissed his forehead. I love you, too, buddy. Always. Later, I sat on the back porch with coffee. The stars were coming out. I thought back to that winter day in Victoria. How broken I'd been. How far I'd come. I'd lost everything. My wife, my money, my trust. But I'd gained something far more valuable. The truth. And a family built on love, not lies. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. And just as though slow, always finds its way home. Dad, Jasper's voice called from inside. Come see the blanket. Fort we made. I smiled, a real smile. Kamingai called back. I stood, walked inside, and closed the door behind me. Some endings are beginnings, and some families are chosen. I had both. Reflecting on everything that happened, there's something crucial I need to share. Don't make my mistakes. I gave trust without question. I overlooked warning signs because my heart was fully invested. I chose to believe promises instead of watching behavior. It almost ruined me completely. The Lord showed me warnings, exhaustion I couldn't explain, nagging suspicions, instances when my gut screamed danger, yet I pushed them aside. When the Lord shut every opportunity during those nightmare years, I believed I was forsaken. Instead, He was strengthening me. When the moment arrived, the Lord reunited me with my boy. These are my takeaways. Believe but confirm. Affection shouldn't equal gullibility. Review the paperwork. Demand answers. Investigate when things don't add up. Genetics don't define kinship, devotion does. Noah and Luna aren't connected to me through biology, but through intentional commitment. That bond surpasses any test results. Accountability arrives slowly, yet surely. I wanted immediate revenge, but strategic patience and solid proof secured their convictions. Legal justice endures. Hold on to the people who matter. Nearly losing Noah for 3 years destroyed me inside, yet I refused to quit looking. This goes beyond typical grandfather's tales you swipe past mindlessly. This represents my authentic experience, one that stripped everything away before returning it. Transformed grandfather's tales like this carry weight beyond mere distraction. Each authentic experience shared here serves as both cautionary reminder and teaching moment. These grandfather's tales exist precisely so others avoid repeating my suffering. Real grandfather's tales change lives. The most powerful grandfather's tales come from pain. This authentic experience is mine to share. If this resonated with you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Forward this to anyone facing similar struggles. Hit subscribe so this reaches people who desperately need these lessons. Perhaps what broke me can shield